I watched my sister Elena load the last piece of my bedroom furniture, my grandmother's antique vanity, into the moving truck, and I didn't say a word. She turned back to me with that triumphant smirk I'd seen 1,000 times before in this life and the last. "Thanks for being so understanding, Claire," she said, not even trying to hide the mockery in her voice. "You know how much I need this for my new place. Besides, Mom said you wouldn't mind sleeping on the floor for a while." I smiled. Actually smiled. Because Elena had no idea that in 3 days I'd be moving into a penthouse apartment in the most exclusive building in the city, fully furnished with pieces that would make her cheap taste look like a garage sale. She also had no idea that every single item she was stealing from me right now was about to become evidence in a lawsuit that would destroy her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The thing about dying and coming back is that you remember everything. Every humiliation, every theft, every moment your family chose your golden child sister over you. I remember dying at 28 in my first life, exhausted, broke, and alone in a studio apartment with nothing but an air mattress and the clothes in my closet. I remembered working 3 jobs while Elena found herself on mom and dad's dime. I remembered being the family ATM, the punching bag, the scapegoat for everything that went wrong. Most importantly, I remembered the exact date I died, March 15th, 8 years from now. When I woke up on my 18th birthday again, with all those memories intact, I knew exactly what I had to do. I had 8 years to rewrite everything. 8 years to protect myself. 8 years to make sure that this time I wouldn't die alone and forgotten. And revenge? That was just a very satisfying bonus. Let me take you back to where it all started, or started again, I suppose. I was 12 when the dynamic in our family crystallized into its final poisonous form. That was the year Elena turned 16 and decided she deserved everything I had, everything I might have, and everything I would ever want. We'd never been close. Elena was 4 years older, infinitely prettier according to everyone, and blessed with the kind of effortless charm that made adults overlook her cruelty and kids desperate for her approval. I was the awkward younger sister, too tall, too bookish, too earnest. Where Elena glided through life, I stumbled. But it wasn't just natural sibling rivalry. My parents had set up the board that way. Dad was a mid-level corporate executive who cared more about appearances than substance. Mom was a former pageant queen who'd pinned all her frustrated ambitions on Elena. I was an afterthought, the second child they'd had to complete the family but never really wanted. Elena's room was a shrine. Queen-sized bed with a designer bedspread, a walk-in closet, a vanity with professional lighting, an iMac, and every gadget a teenage girl could want. My room had a twin bed, a rickety dresser, and a desk I'd bought myself with birthday money when I was 10. The furniture disparity was just a symbol. The real differences ran deeper. Elena got a new car when she turned 16. I was told I could walk or take the bus. Elena got a credit card with a $5,000 limit. I got a lecture about fiscal responsibility when I asked for $20 for a school trip. Elena got to go to design school in New York. I was told that if I wanted to go to college, I'd better earn myself a full scholarship because they'd already spent their savings on Elena's education. I remembered all of it. Every slight, every comparison. Every time Mom said, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Every time Dad forgot my birthday but threw Elena a lavish party. But the furniture incident, that happened when I was 15. Grandmother Rosemary, my dad's mother, had always been the one person in the family who saw me, really saw me. She'd been a professor of literature, fierce and independent, and she'd never bought into the Elena worship that infected the rest of the family. When I was little, I'd spend weekends at her house reading in her library, learning about art and history, and how to stand up for myself. When she died during my sophomore year of high school, she left me her most precious possessions, her bedroom furniture set. It was Victorian era, painstakingly restored, a 4-poster bed carved with roses, a matching dresser and armoire, a vanity with an oval mirror, and a writing desk. The set was worth over $30,000, though that wasn't why I loved it. I loved it because it was Grandma's, because she'd chosen me to have it, because every piece carried her memory. The furniture arrived 2 weeks after her funeral. I was at school when the movers came. When I got home, my room was exactly as it had been that morning. Twin bed, rickety dresser, empty walls. I found my grandmother's furniture in Elena's room. Mom said I could have it, Elena told me when I stood in her doorway, shaking with rage and grief. It looks better in here anyway. Your room is too small for furniture this nice. I ran to find Mom. She was in the kitchen, meal prepping her weekly smoothies, and she barely looked up when I burst in. Mom, Elena took Grandma's furniture. It was left to me. It was in the will. Mom sighed, that particular sigh that told me I was being dramatic again. Claire, the furniture fits better in Elena's room. You heard her. Your room is too small. Besides, it's just furniture. Don't be selfish. It's not just furniture. Grandma left it to me. And it's staying in this house, isn't it? Stop being so possessive. Elena appreciates nice things. You'd probably just ruin it anyway. I appealed to Dad that night. He was in his study, barely listening as I explained what had happened. Your mother made the decision, he said, eyes on his laptop. I'm sure she knows what's best. Elena's room does. Showcase the pieces better. When you get your own place someday, you can have them back. Someday never came. In my first life, Elena took that furniture with her when she moved out at 23. By then, I was so beaten down, so trained to accept scraps, that I didn't even fight it. But I fought everything else in that first life. Fought to put myself through college while working full-time. Fought for every promotion in my career. Fought to save enough for a studio apartment in a bad neighborhood. And I never, ever asked my family for help again, though that didn't stop them from asking me. Elena's design business failed within 2 years. She came to me for money. I gave it to her. Dad lost his job and his retirement savings in a bad investment. He came to me for money. I gave it to him. Mom got sick and needed expensive treatments not covered by insurance. She came to me for money. I gave it to her. I gave and gave and gave, and they took and took and took, and still, I was never good enough. Never Elena. Never their first choice. And then, one day, I collapsed at my third job. Exhausted, burned out, used up. I died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, alone, because my family was too busy at Elena's engagement party to answer their phones. That was my first life. This life was going to be different. When I woke up on my 18th birthday with all my memories intact, my first emotion was rage. Pure, incandescent fury at the years I'd wasted trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. My second emotion was calculating satisfaction. Because I knew things now. I knew which stocks would soar. I knew which cryptocurrencies would explode. I knew about the real estate market crash and recovery. I knew which startups would become giants. I had the blueprint to wealth, and I was going to use it. But I had to be smart. I couldn't just suddenly be rich. That would raise too many questions. I needed to build it carefully, in ways that couldn't be traced or claimed by my family. I started small. I had $2,000 saved from various birthday gifts and part-time jobs. On the day I turned 18, I opened investment accounts in my name only, accounts my parents couldn't access or even know about. I bought Bitcoin at $180 per coin. I bought Ethereum at $8. I invested in Tesla when everyone said Elon Musk was crazy. I also enrolled in community college instead of the university I'd pushed myself to get into in my first life. My parents were thrilled. Community college was cheaper, and it meant I could continue to work and contribute to the household expenses. They had no idea I was taking business and computer science courses that would let me manage my rapidly growing portfolio, and to grow it did. Within 6 months, my $2,000 had become $50,000. Within a year, $200,000. By the time I was 20, I was a millionaire, and no one in my family had any idea. I still lived at home in my small room with my old furniture. I still worked my part-time job at the bookstore. I still dressed simply and drove the beat-up Honda Civic I'd bought with my bookstore money. But I was planning, preparing, investing in my future, and more importantly, in my revenge. Elena, meanwhile, followed exactly the same path as my first life. She graduated from design school with mediocre grades and massive debt. She moved back home at 23, announcing she was going to start her own interior design business. Mom and Dad were ecstatic, falling over themselves to support her. They gave her $50,000 to start her business. They co-signed on a luxury apartment in the trendy part of downtown. They bought her a new car because her old one didn't project the right image. And Elena's business was exactly as successful as it had been the first time, which is to say, not at all. She had no head for business, no work ethic, and no real talent. What she had was an expensive Instagram aesthetic and a conviction that the world owed her success. By the time Elena turned 27 and I was 23, her business was failing again, right on schedule. She was drowning in debt, about to be evicted from her apartment, and desperate. That's when she came home. "I'm moving back in for a while," she announced at dinner one night, "just until I get back on my feet. My apartment is way too expensive and I need to focus on growing my client base without the stress of overhead." Translation: she was broke, evicted, and running out of enablers. Mom immediately started planning how to make room for Elena. That's when I learned about the furniture. "Elena will need the bigger bedroom," Mom said casually, not even looking at me. "You're barely here anyway with your work schedule, Claire. And Elena needs space for her design materials and inspiration boards." I was 23. I'd been sleeping in the same small room with the same cheap furniture for my entire life. Elena was 27, had been given every advantage and had squandered all of it. "You want me to give up my room?" I asked, just to be clear. "We're not asking you to give up anything," Dad said. "Just switch rooms. It's not a big deal." "And the furniture?" I asked because I knew exactly where this was going. "Elena should take Grandma's furniture," Mom said. "It's been in her room all these years anyway. It doesn't make sense to move it." There it was. The same script as the first life. The same casual dismissal. The same assumption that I would roll over and accept whatever scraps they deemed appropriate. But this time, I had millions in the bank. This time, I had a plan. "Okay," I said simply. They all looked surprised. They'd expected more fight, more protest. Elena especially looked suspicious. She knew I'd treasured that furniture, knew it was my last connection to Grandma Rosemary. "Okay," Elena repeated. "Sure," I said with a shrug. "I'll move to the smaller room. You can have the furniture. I'll start packing this weekend." Mom beamed. Dad nodded approvingly. Elena narrowed her eyes, but didn't question her good fortune. That night, I began phase 1 of my plan. The thing about revenge is that it's most satisfying when it's perfectly tailored to the crime. Elena had spent her entire life taking things that belonged to me, my parents' attention, my opportunities, my grandmother's legacy. Now she was going to take my furniture, my room, my dignity. But this time, she was taking bait. I spent the next week meticulously photographing every piece of Grandma Rosemary's furniture. I documented every carving, every detail, every imperfection. I pulled out the will, which I'd gotten a certified copy of from the estate attorney, and highlighted the section where Grandma explicitly left the furniture set to me. I compiled receipts, appraisals, and documentation of the furniture's value. I created a timeline of the original theft, including text messages I'd saved on my old phone and a new timeline of this current theft. I also contacted a lawyer, a very good lawyer, the kind my money could now afford. "This is straightforward theft," he told me after reviewing the documents. "The furniture was bequeathed to you. Your sister has no legal claim to it. Your parents' approval doesn't override the will." "I don't want to pursue it yet," I said. I need you to document everything and prepare the case, but don't file. Not yet." He raised an eyebrow but nodded. Lawyers who charge $800 an hour don't ask too many questions. While I was building my legal case, I was also apartment hunting. Not just any apartment. I was looking for the perfect symbol of everything I'd achieved and everything Elena would never have. I found it 3 days before Elena was scheduled to move back home. A penthouse apartment in Skyline Tower, the most exclusive residential building in the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views. 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen, a private terrace. And the best part? The current owner was relocating to Singapore and wanted to sell it fully furnished with custom pieces from the most expensive design houses in the world. The apartment cost $2.3 million. The furniture added another $500,000 to the price. I bought it in cash. The day Elena moved back home, the day she and Mom gleefully transferred Grandma's furniture from my old room to Elena's new room, I was signing the closing documents on my penthouse. I didn't tell anyone. I just smiled and nodded as they rearranged my life to suit Elena's needs. "Thanks for being so flexible, Claire," Dad said, in a tone that suggested I'd had any choice in the matter. "Of course," I said sweetly. "Family helps family, right?" Elena smirked at me from the doorway of her new room, my old room, surrounded by Grandma's furniture. She thought she'd won. Again. I moved into the smaller bedroom with nothing but my clothes and laptop. Mom immediately started hinting that I should contribute more to household expenses now that Elena was between opportunities. I continued to work my bookstore job and play the role of the overlooked younger sister. But every night I went to my new penthouse, the one no one knew about, and I planned. Phase 2 began 2 weeks later. Elena's design business was in its death throes. She had maybe 3 clients left, all of whom she was stringing along while doing minimal work. She posted constantly on Instagram, perfectly styled shots of her workspace, her inspiration boards, her morning coffee, and aesthetically pleasing mugs. But behind the scenes, she was desperate. That's when I heard her on the phone with Mom. "I just need one good project," Elena was saying. "One high-end client who can give me good referrals, then everything will turn around." Mom made soothing noises. "Something will come up, sweetheart. You're so talented. People just don't recognize it yet." I almost laughed. Elena had no talent. What she had was an eye for pretty things and absolutely no understanding of what actually made good design. She copied Pinterest boards and charged thousands of dollars for custom work that was generic at best. But she was right about one thing. She needed a high-end client. So I gave her one. I created a fake identity. Rebecca Winters, a wealthy widow looking to redesign her late husband's penthouse apartment. I set up an email account, a phone number through a service, and a whole backstory. Then I had my assistant, yes, I'd hired an assistant by this point, she worked remotely and managed my portfolio, reach out to several interior designers, including Elena. Elena jumped at the opportunity. She replied within an hour, her email full of effusive praise for the beautiful vision she had for the space. She included her portfolio, which I already knew was mostly stolen ideas and manipulated photos from other people's work. Rebecca scheduled a consultation. Elena showed up at a coffee shop in her best outfit, portfolio in hand, practically vibrating with desperation, masked as enthusiasm. My assistant, playing Rebecca, was late by design, letting Elena sweat for 20 minutes. When Rebecca arrived, she was apologetic, charming, and clearly very wealthy. She explained that her late husband had left her a penthouse in Skyline Tower. She mentioned the building specifically, and I watched Elena's eyes widen. Everyone knew Skyline Tower was the most exclusive address in the city. She wanted a complete redesign. Budget was no object. She was looking for someone with a bold vision who could transform the space into something spectacular. Elena practically salivated. This was the client who would save her business, make her reputation, put her on the map. This was everything she'd been waiting for. "I'd love to see the space," Elena said. "I already have so many ideas. When can we schedule a walkthrough?" Rebecca smiled. "How about tomorrow, say 2 p.m.? Elena agreed immediately. The next day, I watched from a cafe across the street as Elena arrived at Skyline Tower, portfolio in hand, wearing another expensive outfit she probably couldn't afford. She checked in with the doorman, who confirmed she was expected. She rode the elevator to the penthouse floor, and then she knocked on the door of my apartment. I answered wearing yoga pants and a t-shirt, holding a coffee mug, looking completely at home. Elena's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, calculation, suspicion, and finally anger. "Claire, what are you doing here?" "I live here," I said casually. "Can I help you?" "You live here in Skyline Tower?" "In this penthouse specifically," I said, gesturing around. "Did you need something?" "I have an appointment with Rebecca Winters. This is her apartment." I took a sip of my coffee. "There's no Rebecca Winters here. This is my apartment." I watched as the pieces clicked into place in her mind, the setup. the fake client, the realization that she'd been played. You, she hissed. You did this. You set me up. I don't know what you're talking about, I said innocently. But since you're here, would you like to come in? I'd love to show you around. Elena's face was red with fury, but curiosity won out. She needed to understand. She needed to see. I stepped aside and she walked into my penthouse. The apartment was stunning. The morning light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the professional designer furniture. Real designer furniture from the brands Elena only pretended she could afford. The open-concept living area flowed into a chef's kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances. The dining table could seat 12. The art on the walls was original, not prints. I watched Elena take it all in, her face a mixture of shock and envy. How? She finally asked. How do you have this? You work in a bookstore. I made smart investments, I said simply. Started when I turned 18. Turns out I have a talent for it. You're lying. There's no way. I have $15 million in liquid assets, I continued calmly. Another $8 million in real estate and investments. I bought this apartment outright 4 months ago. The furniture was included. Custom pieces worth more than your entire business ever made. Elena's mouth opened and closed. She looked like I'd slapped her. But you still live at home. You still work at that stupid bookstore. I like my bookstore job, I said. And I lived at home because it was convenient. But then you moved back in and took my room and Grandma's furniture, so I decided it was time to move. Mom and Dad, do they know? No one knows except my financial advisors and my lawyer. Well, and now you. Why are you telling me this? She demanded. Because I want you to understand something, I said, my voice hardening. For our entire lives, you've taken things from me, my parents' attention, my opportunities, my grandmother's legacy. You took and took and took, and everyone let you because you were the pretty one, the charming one, the favorite. And I let it happen because I didn't know better. I moved closer to her, and she actually stepped back. But I'm done letting you take anything from me. That furniture you're so proud of, that's mine. Grandma left it to me, and you and Mom and Dad stole it. I have documentation, photographs, the will, everything. I have a lawyer ready to file a lawsuit for theft and conversion of property. Elena's face paled. You wouldn't. Oh, I absolutely would. But here's the thing. I don't need to, because that furniture, it's worthless to me now. I have better. I have everything better. So you can keep Grandma's furniture as a consolation prize. Something to remember what you could never achieve on your own. You're such a bitch, Elena spat, but her voice was shaking. Maybe, I agreed, but I'm a bitch who won. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a conference call with my investment advisor in 10 minutes. You can show yourself out. Elena stood there for a moment longer, trembling with impotent rage, before she turned and stormed out. I heard the door slam behind her. I smiled into my coffee. Phase 2 complete. Elena told Mom and Dad, of course. They called an emergency family meeting that night, and I agreed to come home for it. I'd been planning this confrontation for 3 years, and I wasn't about to miss it. I arrived to find all 3 of them in the living room. Mom looked devastated, as if I'd personally betrayed her. Dad looked angry and confused. Elena looked like she'd been crying. Whether from rage or grief or shame, I couldn't tell and didn't care. Is it true? Mom demanded before I'd even sat down. Do you really have a penthouse? Millions of dollars? Yes, I said simply. How could you not tell us? Her voice was genuinely anguished, and I almost felt a twinge of guilt. Almost. Because it's my money and my business. We're your family, Dad said. Aniski's family doesn't keep secrets like this. The audacity of that statement, coming from people who'd systematically excluded me from every family decision, every opportunity, every moment of pride, was almost funny. Family, I repeated slowly. Let me tell you about family. Family is being 12 years old and watching your sister get everything while you get nothing. Family is your grandmother leaving you her most precious possessions and having them stolen by your sister with your parents' blessing. Family is working 3 jobs to put yourself through college while your parents fund your sister's failed business ventures. Family is dying alone because everyone was too busy celebrating your sister's engagement to answer your call. They all stared at me. That last part, about dying, didn't make sense to them, but I didn't care. It was true in the timeline that mattered to me. You don't know what you're talking about, Mom said, but her voice was weak. Don't I? I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd been keeping for 3 years. I have documentation of every instance of favoritism, every dollar you spent on Elena versus me, every opportunity you gave her and denied me. I have the will that proves Grandma left her furniture to me. I have proof that you stole it and gave it to Elena. Twice, technically, though you don't remember the first time. This is ridiculous, Dad said. You can't just... I can, and I have. I've been preparing for this conversation for years. I knew exactly what you'd do when Elena came home. I knew you'd take my room, my furniture, my dignity, just like you always have. So I let you, and I documented all of it. Why? Mom asked, and she sounded genuinely hurt. Why would you do this? We're your parents. Because you never treated me like your daughter. Elena was your daughter. I was just the spare, the workhorse, the backup plan. I exist to make Elena look better and bail you all out when you need money. That's not true, Mom protested, but Elena looked away, and even Dad had the grace to look uncomfortable. Did you know, I continued, my voice deadly calm, that in my first life, the one I died in and somehow came back from, Elena came to me for money when her business failed. And I gave it to her. Did you know that Dad came to me for money when he lost his job and I gave it to him? That Mom came to me for money when she got sick and I gave it to her? I gave and gave and gave until I had nothing left. And you all just took it as your due. You never even said thank you. The room was silent. Elena was definitely crying now. Mom looked stricken. Dad just looked old. So, no, I said, standing up. I didn't tell you about my money because it's mine, and I earned it, and I will never give you another cent of it. Claire, Mom started, but I cut her off. I'm done. I'm done being the disappointment, the afterthought, the backup daughter. I have my own life now, a life where I don't have to beg for scraps or accept being treated like I don't matter. What about the furniture? Elena asked quietly, her voice thick with tears. Keep it, I said. Consider it compensation for all the years I supported you emotionally and financially and got nothing in return. But know this, that furniture is the only thing of mine you'll ever have again. I walked to the door, then paused and turned back. One more thing, Elena. Your business failed because you're lazy and untalented. Mom, Dad, you enabled her instead of preparing her for the real world. And all 3 of you made me feel worthless for my entire childhood. But I'm not worthless. I'm worth $23 million and counting, and you'll never see a penny of it. I left. Behind me, I could hear Mom crying and Dad shouting my name, but I didn't stop. I got in my car, a new Tesla Model S that I'd bought the week before, and drove back to my penthouse. My phone rang all night. Texts poured in. Mom, Dad, Elena, all of them with variations of the same message. Apologies that weren't really apologies. Justifications, accusations. Pleas to talk this through as a family. I blocked all of them. You might think that was the end of it. The final confrontation, the dramatic exit, the satisfying triumph. But revenge, true revenge, takes time to fully ripen. Over the next 3 months, I watched from a distance as my family imploded. Elena's business finally collapsed entirely. Without my parents' financial support, which dried up when they realized I wasn't going to bail them out, she couldn't make rent on her office space or pay her few remaining contractors. She had to declare bankruptcy. The furniture she'd been so proud of, Grandma's furniture, had to be listed as an asset. My lawyer swooped in with the will and the proof of theft. The court ordered it returned to me. I had it delivered to my penthouse and immediately put it in storage. I didn't need it. I just needed Elena to know she couldn't keep it. Mom and Dad tried to continue as they always had, maintaining the fiction that they were a respectable upper-middle-class family. But without my financial contributions I'd been making for years without their knowledge, paying for repairs on the house, covering Elena's car insurance, subsidizing their retirement, things started to crack. The house needed a new roof. They couldn't afford it. Dad's job was downsizing. His position was eliminated. Mom's car broke down. They couldn't afford to fix it. All the small ways I'd been keeping them afloat, propping them up while they poured everything into Elena, became glaringly obvious in my absence. Elena tried to get a real job, not running her own business. But her resume was a disaster. Years of self-employment with nothing to show for it, no references, no track record of success. She ended up working retail for $15 an hour, the same wage I'd made at the bookstore while building my fortune. Mom called me once, about 6 months after our confrontation. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Claire," she said, and her voice was different, smaller. "I just wanted you to know that your father and I are proud of you. What you've accomplished, it's remarkable." I waited, saying nothing. "We know we made mistakes. We know we favored Elena. I thought that you were so capable, so strong, that you didn't need us the way she did. I thought you'd be fine no matter what. So you made her weak and me strong by giving her everything and me nothing," I said flatly. "I see that now. I see how unfair we were. And I'm sorry." It was the first time my mother had ever apologized to me for anything. "Is that why you called?" I asked. "To apologize? Or do you need something?" There was a long pause. "Your father's unemployment is running out. Elena can barely cover her rent. The house needs repairs we can't afford. I'm not asking for money," she added quickly. I wanted you to know, that's all." "Okay," I said, "I know." "Claire, goodbye, Mom." I hung up. I didn't call back. I didn't offer help. I didn't soften because this was the test. This was where, in my first life, I would have caved. I would have felt guilty for having while they struggled. I would have told myself that family is family, that you help people you love even when they've hurt you. But I'd learned something in that first life, in my death and rebirth. You can't help people who won't help themselves. You can't pour yourself into a void and expect it to be filled. You can't earn love from people who've decided you're not worth loving. So I let them struggle. I let them learn what it meant to live without a safety net. I let them experience what I'd experienced my entire life. The fear, the stress, the exhaustion of trying to make ends meet, while everyone around you seems to have it easy. A year after I moved out, I was featured in a business magazine. The 25-year-old millionaire who turned $2,000 into $30 million through strategic investing. The article detailed my investment strategies, my background in finance, my plans for the future. It mentioned, in passing, that I'd started with just birthday money and no family support. The article went viral. Suddenly, everyone knew. My old high school friends, my former coworkers, my extended family, and, of course, Mom, Dad, and Elena. The messages started up again, but this time they weren't just from my immediate family, cousins I barely remembered, aunts and uncles who'd never given me a second glance, old family friends, all of them suddenly very interested in reconnecting. I had ignored them all. The only person I responded to was my Aunt Sarah, Dad's younger sister. She'd always been kind to me in a distant sort of way, and she'd loved Grandma Rosemary. "I saw the article," she wrote. "I'm proud of you, not just for the money, but for getting out. I know how they treated you, Claire. I tried to say something once, but your parents wouldn't hear it. I'm sorry I didn't do more." We met for coffee. She was one of the few family members I'd actually missed. "Grandma Rosemary would be so proud of you," Sarah said. She always knew you were special. She used to tell me that you were the one who got away, the one who wouldn't let them crush your spirit." "She left me her furniture," I said. "Did you know that Mom and Dad gave it to Elena?" Sarah's face darkened. I suspected your grandmother would have been furious. I got it back eventually. It's in storage. I don't need it anymore, but I couldn't let Elena keep it. That's not about the furniture, Sarah said gently. That's about principle. Yes, I agreed. It is. We stayed in touch after that. Sarah became the family I chose, the one connection to my past that didn't feel like poison. 2 years after I moved out, Elena sent me a letter, an actual handwritten letter, which was so unlike her that I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity, again, won out. Dear Claire, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you, not just the furniture or the room or mom and dad's attention. I took your childhood, your sense of security, your right to feel loved and valued. I've spent the last 2 years working retail and living in a studio apartment with a roommate, and it's the hardest I've ever worked in my life. I'm exhausted all the time. I can barely pay my bills. I have no safety net, no backup plan, no one to bail me out when things go wrong, and I finally understand that this is how you lived for years. Except you also had to deal with us, with me, taking everything you managed to earn or save or build. I was spoiled, I was cruel, I was lazy. I thought I deserved everything I got because mom and dad told me I was special. They made me think the world owed me success just for existing. You learned early that you had to earn everything yourself, and instead of admiring that, I resented you for making me look bad. I don't expect you to help me. I don't expect you to care about my struggles. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry, and I'm trying to be better. I'm going back to school for accounting. I'm learning to budget. I'm learning that hard work actually matters. I know it's too late. I know I can't undo the damage. But I wanted you to know that you were right about everything, and I was wrong. Your sister, Elena. I read the letter 3 times. I looked for the manipulation, the angle, the hidden request for money or help, but I couldn't find it. It seemed genuine. I didn't respond, not because I was being cruel, but because I genuinely didn't know what to say. Some part of me, the part that remembered being 12 years old and desperately wanting my big sister to love me, wanted to believe that Elena could change. But the part of me that had died alone in my first life knew better than to trust easy redemption. I put the letter in a drawer and went on with my life. By the time I turned 26, my net worth had climbed to $50 million. I'd started a venture capital firm specializing in female-founded startups. I'd bought a second property, a beach house where I could escape on weekends. I'd traveled to 20 countries. I'd dated, though nothing serious. I'd built a life so full and rich that my family's absence was barely noticeable. I'd won. But the thing about revenge is that it's a dish best served cold, and I was patient. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew that in my first life, on March 15th, now just 6 months away, I would have died. And I wanted to be there, alive and thriving, on the anniversary of my death that never happened in this timeline. I wanted to look at myself in the mirror on that date and know that I'd rewritten everything. March 15th arrived on a Tuesday. I woke up in my penthouse in my California king bed with its custom Italian linens, surrounded by luxury that would have been unimaginable to the Claire of my first life. I took my time getting ready. I went to my favorite yoga class. I had a leisurely brunch at the cafe overlooking the river. I checked my portfolio, up another 7% from a particularly successful investment in an AI startup. And then, because I apparently still had a flair for the dramatic, I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't been back in 2 years. The house looked shabbier than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The lawn needed work. The roof still hadn't been replaced. They'd just patched it badly. I knocked on the door. Mom answered. She looked older, more tired. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Claire, she finally said, this is unexpected. Can I come in? She stepped aside and I walked into the house I'd grown up in. It felt smaller, darker, more cramped. Or maybe I'd just grown too large for it. Dad was in the living room watching TV. He looked up when I entered, his expression wary. Claire. Dad. We stared at each other for a long moment. I'm not here to fight, I said finally. I'm not here to gloat. I'm not even here for closure, really. I'm here because today is important to me and I needed to see something. What? Mom asked, joining us in the living room. I needed to see that I survived in another life, one you'll never remember and I can barely explain. I died today. I was 28 years old, exhausted, broke, and alone. I died because I'd given everything I had to all of you, and there was nothing left for me. They looked at me like I was crazy, and maybe I was, but I continued anyway. But in this life, I'm alive, I'm successful, I'm happy. And I didn't need any of you to get here. That's what I needed to see. That I could build a life without you, and it would be better than anything I could have had with you. Claire, Dad started, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. I want you to understand something. I don't hate you. I did for a while, but hate takes energy, and you're not worth it. What I feel for you now is nothing. You're like distant acquaintances, people I used to know, and that's exactly what you deserve to be. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We're your parents. Biologically, yes, but you never acted like parents, not to me. So I released you from that obligation. You're free. You don't have to pretend to care about me anymore, and I don't have to pretend your approval matters. Is this because we didn't support your business ventures? Dad asked, and I almost laughed at how completely he missed the point. No, Dad, this is because you didn't support me, ever, in any way that mattered. But it's okay now because I learned to support myself. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, if you ever need anything, truly need it, life or death, call me. I won't let you die or become homeless, but beyond that, we're done. I've given you all the emotional labor, all the forgiveness, all the chances you're going to get. Live your lives, I'll live mine. I walked out before they could respond. As I drove away, I felt something lift from my chest. It wasn't forgiveness, I hadn't forgiven them, and I wasn't sure I ever would. But it was release. The final severing of the chains that had bound me to them. I was free. That night, I went to my penthouse and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city. The lights sparkled below me. Thousands of lives being lived, thousands of stories unfolding. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Sarah. Thinking of you today? Want to grab dinner this week? I smiled and texted back, yes, I'd like that. Another text came through, this one from my venture capital partner. The Rodriguez startup just got acquired. You were right about them. Your instincts are incredible. Thanks, I replied. Let's celebrate tomorrow. A third text from a guy I'd been casually seeing. Still on for Friday? Absolutely, I wrote back. My life was full. Not with the family I was born into, but with the family I'd chosen. The people who valued me, who saw me, who celebrated my successes instead of resenting them. I thought about the furniture, Grandma's furniture, sitting in a climate-controlled storage unit across town. I'd kept it out of spite at first, determined that Elena wouldn't have it. But now I realized I'd kept it for another reason. I'd kept it as a reminder of who I'd been and who I'd become. The scared, overlooked girl who treasured those pieces because they were the only proof that someone had loved her. And the woman I was now, who didn't need physical proof of worth because she'd built her own empire. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd have the furniture moved to Aunt Sarah's house. She'd always loved Grandma Rosemary. She'd appreciate the pieces for what they were, not weapons in a family war, but beautiful objects with history and meaning. I was done using them as symbols. I was done fighting wars that had already been won. 3 years later, on my 29th birthday, I received another letter from Elena. This one was shorter. Claire, I graduated with my accounting degree. I got a job at a mid-sized firm. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it. And I'm proud of myself for the first time in my life. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or reconciliation. I know that ship has sailed. I'm writing because I wanted you to know that the letter I sent you 3 years ago, the one you never responded to, changed my life. I read it over and over, and I realized that if I couldn't even convince myself that I'd changed, how could I convince you? So I actually changed. I did the work. I became the person I should have been all along. And while you'll never know this version of me, while we'll never be sisters the way we should have been, I'm grateful that you existed to show me what strength and resilience actually look like. I hope you're happy. You deserve it more than anyone I know. Elena. This time, I did respond. Just 2 words. Thank you. I didn't offer reconciliation. I didn't offer forgiveness. But I did offer acknowledgement that she'd grown. And sometimes, that's enough. 5 years after I'd walked out of my parents' house for the last time, I received a phone call from a hospital. Dad had had a heart attack. He was stable, but it had been serious. I went, not because I owed them anything, but because I'd meant what I said. I wouldn't let them die. I walked into the hospital room to find Dad hooked up to monitors, Mom sitting beside him, looking frail and frightened. They both looked so much older than they should have at their age. Stress and bad choices had aged them prematurely. Claire, Mom said, standing up. You came. I said I would if it was life or death, I replied simply. Dad looked at me with eyes that were finally clear of denial. Thank you, he said quietly, for coming and for everything. I didn't ask what everything meant. I didn't need to. The doctors say you'll be fine, I told him. You need to change your lifestyle. Diet, exercise, stress management. Can you do that? He nodded. Good. I turned to Mom. Do you need anything? Practically speaking? She hesitated, then shook her head. We're managing. Elena helps sometimes. And we've learned to live within our means. Okay. I moved toward the door, then paused. I meant what I said 5 years ago. Life or death, I'll be here. But that's the boundary. That's all I can give. We understand, Mom said. And Claire, we really are proud of you, even if we never showed it right. I nodded and left. In the hallway, I ran into Elena. She was carrying coffee and wearing scrubs. Apparently, she'd come straight from work. We stared at each other for a long moment. Hi, she said finally. Hi. Thanks for coming. I know you didn't have to. He's still my father. Yeah, she shifted uncomfortably. I read about your latest venture, the Women's Leadership Foundation. It's incredible. Thank you. Another awkward silence. Claire, Elena said, her voice hesitant. I know we're never going to be close. I know I don't deserve that. But maybe someday we could have coffee? Just to, I don't know, be cordial? I considered it. The old me would have said no automatically, kept the wall firmly in place. But I was 31 years old now, and I'd learned that holding grudges was exhausting and that you could acknowledge someone's growth without letting them back into your inner circle. Maybe, I said. Someday, Elena smiled just a little. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. I walked away, and this time I didn't look back. Now at 33, I look back at the 23-year-old who watched her sister take her bedroom furniture and smiled because she knew what was coming. I look back at the 18-year-old who woke up with memories of another life and decided to rewrite everything. I look back at the dying 28-year-old from a timeline that no longer exists, who gave everything and got nothing in return. I've built an empire. Not just of wealth, though my net worth now exceeds $100 million, but of relationships, experiences, purpose. I fund scholarships for young women from difficult family situations. I mentor female entrepreneurs. I've written a book about financial independence and overcoming family dysfunction. I've created something meaningful from my pain. My penthouse is still fully furnished with pieces far more valuable than Grandma's furniture ever was. But I've also furnished it with memories, dinner parties with friends I chose, artwork I collected during travels, photos of experiences that mattered. The apartment I bought came fully furnished, yes. But I furnished my life with everything that matters: agency, independence, joy, peace. My family exists on the periphery now. Christmas cards, occasional hospital visits, civil texts on birthdays. We'll never be close. The damage was too deep, the betrayal's too fundamental. But we've reached a détente, a mutual understanding that we're better apart than together. Elena has her life. She's dating someone nice, working steadily, attending therapy. She'll never be wealthy, never be successful in the way she once dreamed, but she's learning to be content. Mom and dad have retired on a modest pension, living in a small condo that's actually within their means. They volunteer at a community center, and apparently dad has taken up gardening. They're not happy exactly, but they're not miserable either. And me, I'm thriving. Last week, I closed on a deal that will bring sustainable design resources to underserved communities. Next month, I'm speaking at a conference for women in finance. In 6 months, I'm taking a 3-week vacation to New Zealand with friends who love me and whom I love in return. My life is full. My life is mine. Sometimes late at night, I think about that other timeline, the one where I died at 28, alone and exhausted. I think about the girl who gave everything and got nothing, who loved a family that never loved her back, who worked herself to death trying to earn affection that was never going to come. And then I look around my penthouse, at the art on my walls, the books on my shelves, the evidence of a life lived fully and joyfully, and I know that I won. Not just because I have money, though the money is nice, but because I learned the most important lesson. You don't have to earn love. Real love is freely given. And if your family can't give it, you find it elsewhere. You build it yourself. You become the person you needed when you were younger. The furniture was never really about the furniture. It was about respect, about being seen, about being valued. My sister took my bedroom furniture after my rebirth, thinking she'd won something. But I bought an apartment that came fully furnished with everything I needed to build a new life. And in doing so, I won everything. The end.